the day, and then we'll discuss its implications in Africa or around the world. So basically, right now, looking at Kenya's social media democracy. So we'll start with that, Kenya's social media democracy. So do you think social media can be a tool for better governance? Of course, a lot of Kenyans on social media are castigating the regime of the Ruto administration. I think you have the president being painted in a coffin, and of course, the Kenya Security Minister Kipchumba Murkomen has said that you need to maintain law and order online. But of course, then you have some opposition leaders like Molekina saying there has been the government needs to embrace technology. Of course, Kenyans are spreading AI images of the president William Ruto in a coffin. So of course, the Kenyans have said this is wrong. That basically they are not doing a good thing by painting a president in a coffin. So basically, that's it for now. I think what we need to be able to do is just to say that we need to be able to maybe have the ground rules. This is the new form of democracy. They call it social media democracy. So, of course, the Interior Minister of Kenya, that's the Security Minister, said they will go down hard on anyone that spreads their messages on social media. So basically, Kenyans embrace social media. Of course, you had the Mandamano riots in June 2024, where they came out in large numbers, basically to be able to advocate for better governance. So basically, this is the thing that we should be safeguarding. How easy we can safeguard our democracy, and I think if we do that, then that's how we are able to develop this democracy. So if we develop this democracy, then Kenya will be in a way will embrace maybe social media democracy. And I think this is a new tool. You cannot dismiss social media. You cannot say that it is only for a few people, a few urban elites that basically are removed from the ground. Even rural people have access to TikTok, and so they are using social media to be able to pressure the government to be able to deliver on the better government services. So what the government is doing, it is abducting people. The government is abducting people. The abduction of government critics is a return through the dark days of dictatorship under the former President Daniel Arap Moi. So, of course, you have a minister in Ruto's administration, that is Justin Muturi. His son was abducted, and he came out to release a statement that the Ruto administration must stop the ongoing abductions. It must stop the abductions, basically, of government critics. This is a democracy you are building. This is not a dictatorship. And I think Kenyans should know that very much. If you don't put the price of democracy is eternal vigilance. The price of democracy is eternal vigilance. If a democracy is unchecked, it very quickly morphs into an establishment, then an oligarchy, then a dictatorship, and finally a monarchy. So basically, we are in the stage of dictatorship, and this must not be allowed to go on. So I would hope that basically, with all things, we will be able to institute changes in Kenyan democracy. That's how we will be able to effect change in our democracy. That's how Kenya can, Africa can move forward. If you have leaders that don't want opposition to their rule, then what is it? This is not a monarchy. And I will say that if you deliver on your promises, then people will have no reason to run to the streets. And I think Kenyans, middle class especially, they are the ones that are affected by bad governance. So it is a good thing that they are embracing social media democracy. So basically, it is a good thing that Kenyans are embracing social media. Of course, the government is worried. It had thought that these people had really it had the government of President Ruto had thought that basically we have this thing in, but that is not the case. We need to be able to be able to argue online. We need to be able to hold the government accountable, and that is why for the Ruto administration, then it behoves that we need to be able to struggle and at least deliver on the promises of the people. If we don't deliver on the promises of the people, then how is it we are able to how can we rule when we cannot deliver on the promises of the people? This is why I say that social media is here to stay. It's a new technology. AI is coming along, and with the coming of AI, then the politicians will be held to account. Look at Kenyans writing to the Dutch monarchy saying that they should not visit Kenya because of the ongoing human rights violations. Because you have that is the Kenyans writing to the Dutch embassy about the ongoing human rights violations. So they are saying this should not be going on. Basically, we don't need this. We don't need the Dutch monarchy in Kenya because they are not. Because they are not. And they are not really embracing Kenya is not embracing democracy. This is a dictatorship, and I think it needs to stop. So basically, we need to have a democracy that is developed, but then Kenyans are not embracing democracy, and this is why then it behoves that social media will continue. Of course, some of it goes overboard, but there are checks and balances for that. But you don't wholesale condemn people that are really struggling, and so that then the country can have a social media democracy. So social media democracy is what the Ruto administration should allow, so that we have more people that and we have a government that delivers. And I think this is the way to go. I think Kenyans are one. I think or voted as among the people that use social media the most. People that I think about 3 hours on average. Kenyans use social media for 3 hours on average. So basically, they will be able to deliver. And I think if we deliver on that front, then the Ruto administration basically must not fear social media. You can not be abducting everyone. Look at this viral video of children saying serikali ya Ruto ilituahidi bilioni 50 ya mama mboga and boda boda. So basically this was about a bottoms up economic model, but then the poor people are feeling the pinch. The poor people are feeling the pinch. They are not getting the services from the government, and this is why there needs to be an assured sense of the government really going all out in order to make sure that Kenyans are able to access the internet. So that's it then. Basically, we need to be able to deliver on these phones. And then another issue that came up basically is the resignation of Eric Latiff from Spice FM. So Eric Latiff has resigned from Spice FM. He will be going over to a Nation Media Group. So basically, what's the future of mainstream media, and is Standard Group going into a ditch? I think Standard Group, I think. Was the pioneer private TV station in the country, because remember before that there was only the KBC, the government broadcaster, but then came KTN and the Standard newspapers. Of course, Standard is over 100 years old. They came basically the Standard Media Group basically came, and I think it revolutionized television in the country. Of course, it was owned by the Moi family, so of course now it is going undergoing financial turmoil. But not just that, part of it is about the whole changing of the media landscape. So basically, I think the future of urban radio in Kenya, the future of urban radio is basically in turmoil. So basically, can urban radio be on can urban radio survive? Basically, we are getting podcasts, we are consuming news and information on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on X. You can get all sorts of experts on X. So basically, how will we be able to ensure that we get the right how will the mainstream media adapt? And it's not just a Kenyan problem, it's a problem all over the world of mainstream media trying to cater to compete with the social media. So you have in America, even CNN had basically its prime time. The numbers went down from 2 million just a few years ago to about 600,000 prime time. So basically, that shows you the audience is splintering. There are a lot of people that are consuming content outside of the mainstream media. So how does the mainstream media adapt? And I think you even had President Trump's son, Baron Trump, telling him, "Dad, you have to do podcasts." And I think a lot of the young voters that voted for Donald Trump, I think they did because of his engagement on podcasts. And of course, he did an interview with Joe Rogan. Of course, Joe Rogan is the independent. Has an audience of about 11 million people. That's more. That's equals about CNN's audience. So basically, Joe Rogan did. I think Donald Trump did an interview on Joe Rogan, and of course, Joe Rogan talks all sorts of interviews all sorts of people. So long as you're trending, Joe Rogan interviews you. He interviews politicians, celebrities, technology titans, industry titans, even sports personalities. And I think that is why then you have Donald Trump doing a podcast with you have Donald Trump doing a podcast with that is Joe Rogan, and I think going viral. But then of course you had Kamala Harris also attempting to do a podcast with Alex Cooper that is called Her Daddy. So I think mainstream media is undergoing, and even for newspapers themselves, even for newspapers, I think they are undergoing turmoil because a lot of people are not willing to pay for content. So basically, maybe the newspaper should be tied down so that they can give us niche content. And I think maybe they need to tie up the paywall so that you have celebrity and celebrity gossip, political gossip being found and basically being accessed for free, and then niche content should be able to be tied under a paywall. So maybe, and I think it is surprising that it is the business and finance, it is the niche newspapers that are converting and that are racking up subscriptions. You have the likes of Wall Street Journal. I think it has the highest number. It is the newspaper with the highest number of paid subscribers, basically because people are looking for insights and information on the latest business and finance stories. So basically, you have those people that are going to look for business and finance stories so that then they can maybe use it up to buy a stock to be able to just have insights. And I think the former CEO of National Media Group, Linus Gitahi, said that the media should be selling as insights. That is, the media should be selling as insights and not. The former CEO of National Media Group says that the media should be selling as insights and not agitating news. So maybe we can start. Maybe have 5 or 8 opinion columns. There are usually 2 during the weekday, and then maybe I think 4 on Saturday and 8 on Sunday. So I think we need to have opinion columns about 8 every day. Even have opinion column on page 1. That's the way we can really embrace media. I think the real death of media is in advertising. Advertising is the lifeline of media. So you have a lot of newspapers lost classified advertising to online tech giants such as Facebook, Google, YouTube, TikTok. I think a lot of newspapers lost classified advertising to this online tech giants. That's why they are merging. And even in America, you have local news. Local news. Even in America, you have local news that is you have local news that is going the dinosaur's way, mainly because local businesses are choosing to advertise in local businesses are choosing to advertise that is to advertise in online. And I think the fact that online media you can have online tech giants tailor and add to the zip code, so that makes it possible for local businesses to be able to advertise. Look at the ongoing ban on TikTok. I think a lot of small businesses in America are up in arms. They say that if you ban TikTok, then we will go out of business. That's what these small businesses are saying. That is, if you advertise, then we will go. If you ban TikTok, then we will go out of business. So basically, then remember, if you something is free on the internet, then you are the product. If something is free on the internet, then you are the product. So basically, this when you visit an electronics website, then the next website you are going to visit, you are going to get a lot of electronic item ads, electronic item ads. So basically, that's just the way it is, and that's how the social media companies make their money, harvesting your information, then selling that information to advertisers so that then they can target ads for you. So that's the premium economy. Basically, we are products. If something is free on the internet, then you are the product. So that's just the way it goes, and I think we need to be able to be assured that this is the way we can begin to do business. This is the way that we will be able to at least this is the way we will be able to fashion our democracy. This is the way that we will be able to have first this is the way I think online media has to just know that this is the way maybe we can retain this is the way the business model is about a premium economy where if something is free on the internet, and then you are the product. So that's about tiring up, and then of course now Eric Latiff will be going to Nation. Remember, Nation FM had shut down in 2016 to 2021. So basically, I think they are the pioneers of the situation room of talk radio, and I think but they didn't find quite the number of people, because remember, to commentate you must virtually know almost everything in the world, or have a wide range of topics. So they didn't quite find the people that will commentate. That is Nation Media Group. Nation FM did not quite find the people that will commentate on their their radio station. So basically, I think they went for academics, that is PhDs, but then they needed to be able to find people who are truly knowledgeable about things, so then they would be able to have a first class content, because remember, you're competing with the likes of Maina Kageni and Mwalimu Kingangi on the morning FM show. So you're competing with Mwalimu Kingangi and Maina Kageni on the morning FM show, on who basically talk about relationships. And a lot of people are having stressful lives, so they don't want this serious stuff. They really don't want serious stuff about solving the deep issues of the day. And I think when the middle class address issues that are addressed, I think part of the appeal of Space FM was because it appealed to the middle class. Basically, they were the ones who are tired of relationships content, so they wanted really better governance for their people, and so that's why they tuned into Space FM. So I don't know whether this is what Eric Latiff is going to present to. I don't know whether this is what Eric Latiff is going to present to. That is at Nation FM, but I think yes, he will. Of course, he had two other co-presenters, that is City Muga, and of course that is Drew Oko. So I don't know whether they have also been poached, but I think it is a perilous time for Standard Media Group. Journalists are earning low salaries, salaries that are delayed. So basically, they need to try out, maybe stop news and just bring in a talk show host, bring in talk show host, so that you can see how this media can move along. So that's it about that is Eric Latiff really switching camps and going to going to Nation FM. So this is something, talk radio is something that has not been tried here in Kenya for so long, but I think it will work just fine. So the media needs to sell insights. That's what the media is doing, at least for rural media. A lot of rural folk don't have access to the internet. A lot of rural folk really don't have access to the internet. So basically, they still rely on rural radio, maybe Radio Citizen, maybe Radio Jambo, Radio Maisha, Milele FM. They still rely on such, and even the vernacular stations are still doing well, because a lot of rural folk still don't have that money for bundles, so they basically tune into their radio stations. But I think for a lot of urban folk, urban areas, urban radio, really, they have access to the internet, so they can get alternative content, and that is how then we will be able to tune in. That is how we will be able to I think that is how we will be able to tune in. That is how urban media will be able to be innovative, and I think if they do that, then that's the way we will be able to that's the way we will be able to have urban stations that can really that's the way we will be able to have urban stations that can cater to their people. But remember, the media can really be a positive force for for Kenya, for Africa. The media can be a positive force. The problem we have is that the media is owned by profiteers. That's the problem we have in Africa, that the media is owned by profiteers who really look at the bottom line. They want the bottom line. What's the bottom line? It's the bottom line is that the bottom line is that profits. Media is like selling beer. There must be profits, and so they are looking accountable to their shareholders who want profits. But of course, so the deep issues that affect Africa are put in the small sidebar column in other news column. While because if media editors have what they call a barometer. Barometer is basically can your story be a talk? Can it be a point of discussion in a bar? Can your story be that is a fireplace chat? Can your story be a fireplace chat? If it is not, then it is tossed aside, and this is why we need investors in media to be also not just looking for profits, but people who are engaged on the deep issues of the day in Africa. The media is not just another form of business. It is the fourth estate of democracy. It is really the fourth estate of democracy after the other three, that is the judiciary, parliament, judiciary, legislature, and the executive. The media really is the fourth estate of democracy. So the media takes over from where schooling left, and that is why then you have a lot of these media stations. So what needs to happen is that the media must be able to that is basically, of course, in Kenya we want the media to be neutral, but I think you have, I think someone says they don't need to be neutral. I don't know whether it is CNN's Christian Norman Paul who says the media must be truthful, not neutral, must be truthful, so that then you engage with it from that point. Look at American media stations; they know that basically Fox News is the right of center media, and maybe CNN or CNBC or MSNBC or NBC is a left of center station. So they approach those media houses and knowing those are a left of center station and a right of center station. Look at the way the left wing media has had a lot of meltdown simply because Donald Trump won, and so the left wing media in America are having a meltdown. So basically, this is the sort of situation we need to have. Of course, for Kenya, I don't think you can have an ideological media because I think that will descend down to tribalism. I think it will be a media for Kikus, a media for Luos, a media for Kalenjin. So in Kenya, if you have a media that is ideologically centered, I don't think that can work because in Kenya, basically, yes, you could have one or two ideological politicians, but our politics is organized around a tribe. Our politics is not organized around issues, so you cannot have a left or center media in Africa. You cannot have a right of center media in Africa. But what you do have is a media that leans towards maybe the tribal groupings, a media that leans towards maybe a cult of personality. So that's why you cannot have an ideological media. So just like our politics is centered around the cult of personality and the cult of tribe, our media stations are also stations around the cult of personality and the cult of tribe. And remember, for the private media is all about profits. So news is commodity and not a public service as it ought to be. So that's why the media is collapsing. So that's it about Eric Latiff. Moving over from Spice FM and going over to that is moving over from Spice FM and going over to that is a Nation FM. Then another thing that happened is the release of the KCSE results. Another thing that happened is the release of the KCSE results. So basically, KCSE is the high school exit exams in Kenya. So the high school exit exams were released. The high school exit exams were released. That is KCSE, and the top students, I think about 246,000 students got above grade C plus. 246,000 students got above grade C plus. So that's the minimum university entry grade. So that's about 25% of the students are going to university. So that leaves, where are the jobs for these people? Because you're not just training them, you're training a future workforce, and there is no need to be spending billions on training a workforce when they will not find a meaningful work. That's what we are supposed to be asking. Are these people going to find a meaningful work wherever after they graduate? People are saying up to 10, 15 years without a job. So some people, Kenya will be like Nigeria very soon. Kenya will be like Nigeria. There will be doctors being bus drivers. There will be engineers selling eggs on the streets. There will be accountants. Basically hawking clothes on the streets. I'm not saying these are bad jobs by any means. There are means to secure an income, but then they're not in that profession. Of course, hawking clothes is good. It puts food on your table, but it is not what will make us industrialized. That's just a fact. Selling eggs on the streets is not what will make Kenya industrialized. It is not will build a civilization for Kenya. We need engineers that can compete on AI. We need engineers that can compete in the latest programming software. That's the kind of technology. Those are the kind of skills we need to be engaging. But then there are no jobs to be able to do these things. So basically, I'm not saying it's bad to sell to be a bus driver. I'm not saying it's bad to sell eggs on the street. But the fact is that basically what we have right now is just the fact is that basically what we have right now is just people that are is just that people that are really just training our workforce. We are training our workforce, but there is no work. People, so that means we are not engaging our human resources fully. So you have President Ruto coming up with an labor market, trying to find a market for our labor force. So why do we train them in the first place? Why do we train all this workforce when they will have no jobs? And they are going to places like Saudi Arabia, where we've had horror stories of our housemates we've had horror stories of our housemates basically of our housemates being that is being even returning in coffins, being killed. Basically, we've had horror stories such as those. They are looking for jobs in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, but the thing is, we must resuscitate the economy. How? Maybe even we could say every engineering graduate could get a 1 million shillings, $10,000, so that then they will begin the enterprise. That's the way we will remake our country. That's the way we will rebuild our country. When we export jobs, when we export our labor force, they are going to assist those countries. They are not going to be able to put their skills to use in the country. So basically, we have no avenue for job creation because we don't value our best and brightest. When you have people that are rich, billionaires that are rich, that have no product or service they are selling, this is what happens in Kenya. This is what happens in Africa. You have billionaires that have no products they have invented. They have no service they have invented. Basically, billionaires stealing public money. And when you, the problem with Africa is that we have more rich people than we have wealthy people. Because remember, riches uplift only an individual, while wealth uplifts the whole society. So basically, we need to be able to figure out how is it we are going to how are we going to be able to fashion a wealthy society by availing capital, that is by availing startup funds. That's the way we are going to enable these youngsters that are graduating from college to be able to go on to get start world beating companies. When will Africa produce a Google? When will Africa produce a Facebook? When will Africa produce a YouTube? When will Africa produce an X? Because we are training people, but we don't have startup capital. We don't have startup capital. We don't have the markets. We don't have the infrastructure. But the government does not see. I kid you not, if we focus more on civilization, then we will be able to develop such companies. There is no reason why an African owning a multinational should be an anomaly. There's no reason why an African owning a multinational is an anomaly. Basically, the only businesses that the government wants us to see is just to sell fruits on the roadside, to sell vegetables on the roadside. Those are the kind of businesses that I think the government thinks we can do. Look at the businesses that are shutting down. There are a lot of businesses that are shutting down in the country because the cost of doing business in Kenya, the cost of doing business is simply too high. The cost of doing business is just too high. The taxes that you are being taxed you are being taxed to death, and basically no country has taxed its way to prosperity. No country has taxed its way to prosperity. Of course, some will say, but the Scandinavian countries tax up to 60%, then, but they do provide the services, they do provide an enabling environment. Schooling up to university is free, and you even paid an allowance. You are assured of getting a job post graduation. When you want to start a company, you go to a bank, the interest rates are low. Look at the situation of Kenya and many African countries. The banks are now not lending to businesses. Banks are not lending to businesses. Banks are lending to banks are lending to that is to the government, because the government usually is the last government cannot default, so basically banks are lending to government and so that raises the interest rates when they are lending to individuals and businesses, and this is why nakuja naenda kuangalia this is why then the government is lending to. This is why the government is lending to businesses. This is why the government is lending to. This is why the government is lending to businesses at such a high rate, because the cost of doing it is cheaper to lend to government and more assured, it is more lucrative. So these banks that are paying CEOs multi-million dollar salaries every year, basically so that these CEOs can lend to government instead of lending to businesses. And this is why cost of credit in Kenya is so high. The cost of credit is so high, and companies are being taxed to death. The issue is increase the tax bracket. Don't increase the taxes. Increase the tax bracket. That's how you will be able to have a country that is able to, and that's how you will be able to have a country that functions. Increase the tax bracket, don't increase the tax rates. So basically, when you have anyone, that is, you have everyone participating in the taxes, then basically you can now reduce the tax rate. And how do people participate in the taxes? By enabling and having an enabling environment for business. The government itself cannot create jobs. There are only a few jobs that the government can create in the civil service, but it is already bloated. So it is the private sector that creates those jobs. It is the private sector that creates those jobs, and this is why it is essential that these jobs that are being created by the government, it is essential that these jobs that are created in the private sector. So that's how you create an enabling environment for business. And if you do that, then there will be there will be prosperity. People will have more money in their pockets. People will be able to lend to go to a bank and be given businesses. This is how the country will be able to function. And when businesses create jobs, then the government can't get taxes, income tax, value added tax. You can't get all those taxes because people are prosperous. So they don't. So they don't want, so they don't mind when they are paying taxes. But someone is already being squeezed. What happens when a business closes down? People lose jobs. So how are they going to participate in the economy when they lose jobs? So basically, this is why I say the government just has to be able, the government really just has to be able to make it a better environment to be able to do business. That is why then I will call on all Kenyans, on all Africans to be able to create an enabling environment. Our leaders don't do this, and that's because we don't interrogate our leaders. We don't interrogate our leaders. We just choose leaders based on tribe, and basically people that can turn around the economy are not afforded the class, and this is why it's so bad. Really, the people that the technocrats that have all the solutions to Africa, it is just unfortunate that they cannot emotionally connect to the peace, and that's another thing we need to talk about. Do we need all these populists in Africa? Do we need these populist people that are able to chant crowds, but then don't have the economic means to lift their people out of poverty? People that can chant up crowds, people that can sing along to crowds, but then they don't have the economic ability to be able to lift their people out of poverty. So basically, we have technocrats that are not being elected. Look at the case of Kenya. I think in 2013 you had Jim Nambaro vying for the governor of Nairobi. You had Jim Nambaro vying for the governor of Nairobi, but then he came up with a 15-page advertorial. That's about 7 million shillings he paid for that advert on what he thought would constitute on what he thought would constitute that is urban the renewal of Nairobi. That's the capital city because Nairobi wants to be the preeminent city in Africa. Nairobi wants to be the preeminent city in Africa. So basically, I would think that Africa really needs to do much more. Kenya needs to do much more in order to maybe elect technocrats. We need to give technocrats a chance. I don't know why we don't give these prince a chance. And then they find, they go outside there, they are engaged. You will find African technocrats being engaged in being given very good lucrative jobs abroad, but then we don't use them here because we just elect people based on tribe, based on chanting to crowds, based on whipping up of emotions, and that is why maybe I agree with the Zambian economist Dr. Dambisa Moyo, who says that basically voters should take a civic test and only those who pass get to be elected. That's what the Zambian economist Dr. Dambisa Moyo says, that voters should take a civic test and only those who pass get to vote because voters have no don't know the weight of their decisions, because voters don't know the weight of their decisions. So basically, voters don't know the weight of their decisions. So they say that voters don't know the weight of their decisions, so they elect very poor candidates to look after their affairs, and I think that's what just is Africa. So I would think that basically. Look at a business such as Cadbury Chocolate. Cadbury Chocolate will now not manufacture in Kenya. Look at Eveready, they will not manufacture in Kenya. So these are businesses, these are technician jobs that are going away. These are engineering jobs that are going away. Basically, now they are just retaining a small office for marketing in Kenya. Then the rest of the jobs are going to South Africa or maybe to Egypt. I think those are mainly the two countries where I think the cost of power, I think in Egypt is a seventh of that of Kenya. The cost of power in Egypt, I think, is a seventh of that of Kenya, and I think also in South Africa. So basically, we are not able to attract investors. The cost of manufacturing in the country is just too high, because when the Revenue Commission Authority, that is KRA, the Revenue Commission, sees that you set up a factory, they just see as an opportunity to milk you dry. This is why they should be told, if a business cannot sustain itself, how will it pay taxes? It is KRA that goes, it is the government that loses out, because you go out of business. So how do you employ people? People will not have income tax, and this is why I say there needs to be a round table. There needs to be a master plan on reviving manufacturing. The beauty about manufacturing jobs and the beauty about manufacturing jobs is that the beauty about manufacturing jobs in the country is that the beauty about manufacturing jobs is that it employs everyone from a grade 2 dropout to a high flying, from a grade 2 dropout to a high flying doctorate holder. That's the beauty about manufacturing jobs. It employs everyone from a grade 2 dropout to a high flying doctorate holder. That's how, and then we will be able to create manufacturing jobs and be able to, that's how we will create manufacturing jobs. And I think if we do that, and then Africa will, Kenya will grow. But I think the economic advisors use a lot of models. I don't know where they get these theoretical models from, where they advise the president that just raise the taxes without knowing that these taxes are really hampering businesses. Businesses are not just doing well, and this is why. And then they must be told in no uncertain terms that the taxes are too high. This is not the way to go about it. That basically, this is just not the way to go about it. And I think if they do that, then they will be able to just have an economy that functions. And if they do that, then Kenya and Africa will be in a good state. And I think Africa, basically Africa has an opportunity to leapfrog the world. Africa has an opportunity. We are the next gold rush after China. Africa is the next gold rush after China. Remember, Africa has over 1 billion people, so that's a market for 1 billion people. It's untapped. It has huge mineral resources, raw materials, mineral resources. Think about coltan. All the mobile phones in the world have coltan. Think about renewable energy, lithium ion batteries. They are found in places such as DR Congo, and in fact, I think the mineral wealth potential of DR Congo is about $30 trillion. That's, you can imagine, the mineral wealth potential of DR Congo is $30 trillion. So you can imagine how very much this mineral potential of DR Congo can resuscitate Africa. That's $30 trillion. You imagine the whole of Africa. That could be $300 trillion of wealth we are sitting on. But that's all. That's only if we value add. That's only if we value add and basically make Africa the leading industrial base in the world. That's by converting titanium to aeroplane parts, converting copper to electronics, converting gold and diamonds to jewelry, converting nuclear power to uranium to nuclear power, converting coffee beans to coffee drinking chains, converting cotton to designer clothes. That's the way we will be able to develop the African economy. That's the way we will be able to develop Africa in long stays. Otherwise, we are just building an economy of selling vegetables on the roadside, selling eggs on the roadside, and selling second-hand cars. That's what the economy of Africa is predicated upon, and that's why we are not moving forward. So this is why I say Africa needs to be able to. Africa really needs to be able to do everything within possible, so that then it can manufacture. It can manufacture, and I think the beauty about manufacturing jobs is that it employs everyone. So everyone can have a factory job. Then they will be able to, and when you have a factory job, you can lift up yourself by your own bootstraps. So that's it. So then, and the other issue that came up in the day is that the KCSE stars, that is those who were the top students in high school in Kenya and maybe in Africa, they want to study abroad. They want to study in elite American colleges. That is the top students in the KCSE, in the high school exit exams KCSE, who all want to study in countries in they all want to study in elite American Ivy League colleges, maybe the Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, Stanford, Williams College, and maybe Rice University. They all want to study in those colleges. So what does that mean? First of all, our universities are not measuring up in terms of quality to be able to attract the top brains. Basically, now our universities are just elevated high schools. Our universities are now just elevated high schools. We only do teaching. We don't do research. We don't do research. We don't generate new knowledge. That's just it. Basically, we don't do teaching. We don't do teaching. We don't do we don't do teaching. We do only teaching. We don't do research. We don't generate new knowledge. And I know, of course, the World Bank, I think in the 1990s, advised African countries that the World Bank advised African countries that basically the way to the World Bank advised African countries that concentrate on basic education, don't concentrate on higher education. That's what the World Bank advised African countries, that concentrate on basic education, don't concentrate on higher education. So that's why then you have a lot of African countries really not going towards that route. And this is why I say Africa just must be able to, Africa must be able to know that Africa must be able to know that it has to generate new knowledge. I know research is an ivory tower idea, so why not have every professor have maybe at least $10,000 for research every year, or maybe $50,000 for every professor? Why are we just regurgitating knowledge from the West? And the West have their own problems. The West have their own problems. Look at a disease such as malaria. It could have been eradicated, but then the West is not keen on that because it is not a priority for them. Maybe things such as cancer, maybe things such as balding. These are where research money in America is going to. So basically, we are the ones who are going to eliminate malaria. We are the ones who are going to eliminate poverty. So basically, even though in the short term research does not pay, in the medium to long term research always pays. That is why I would say that this is why I would say that really needs to be able to Africa really needs to be able to just ensure that we put our best brains. There are about 40,000 African PhDs that work outside of Africa. There are about 40,000 African PhDs that work outside of Africa. So that shows you. But then at the same time, there are about 100,000 expatriates that work in Africa, Western expatriates. So what does that mean? It just means that basically we have to do more. We have to be able that is, we have to be able to. Why do we pay these Western expatriates so much money when we can't pay the African PhDs to be able to stay right here in Africa? So that's something that I think we can follow through, and that's something that I think we can follow through. So that's the students in Form 4 study in elite American colleges, and they are not willing to use their return ticket. They are not willing to use their return ticket. Basically, they are not willing to use their return ticket. They basically just are able to. They are able to only they get lucrative jobs and then they stay in these countries and then they don't come back. So that's it then. So you can have, I think in 1989, the top student was named Samnake in 1989, the top student was named Samnake from the Alliance High School. He is now a doctor in Australia. The top student in 1990 was Fred Were from Starehe Boys Center, who is now a doctor in the US. He went to, I think, Harvard in 1981. One of the top students was Humphrey Watanga. He went to Harvard. He has a degree pursue a degree in biochemistry. Then in 1992, the top student was Gilbert Tengeta from Mango High School. He went to the University of Southern California, and and basically he was that is he went to the University of Southern California, and basically he is now an engineer in the US. In 1993, the top student was Sheni Kanyaru. He went to from Malance High School. He went to Harvard, and he went to I think Harvard. Is now a financial consultant in Wall Street. Then in 1994, the top student was Kilimania Murithi from the Alliance High School. He went to from the Alliance High School. He went to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now he is a computer engineer in America. Now I think in Mercury Computer Systems. In 1995, one of the top students was James Mwangi. He went to that is Harvard University, and I think he is now a management consultant with Dalba Consulting in South Africa. In 1996, one of the top students was Nathaniel Choge. He went to from Alliance High School. He is a financial consultant in America. In 1997, one of the top student was Mwashuma Nyata. He went to the top student in 1997 was Mwashuma Nyata. He went to that is Harvard University, and of course also became a Rhodes Scholar, and now he is a financial consultant with SoftBank. In 1998, the top student was Timothy Zairo. He went to that is from Alliance High School. He went to Harvard University. He became one of the Microsoft millionaires. That is after Microsoft instituted an employee share ownership scheme. After Microsoft instituted an employee share ownership scheme, and of course then in 1992, in 1999, the top student was Samuel Gikandi. He went to Samuel Gikandi went to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. From the Alliance High School. He is now a computer engineer. He went to work for Morgan Stanley, and of course he came back and is now I think founded Africa Stocking and SMS Pearl Company, and he is also a board member of Stanbic Bank. And then in 2000, the top student was Darti Champati, who went to University of Adelaide in Australia, and of course he majored in electrical engineering, and of course I think he is a defense system software engineer at Apogee. And then in 2001, the top student was Amit Monga from Sarai Boys Center. He went to McGill University in Canada, and now he is one of the top students. I think he then went to Rotman School of Management, of course, to pursue an MBA, and of course he works in Canada. Then in 2002, the top student was Paul Bundi. He went to Paul Bundi went to the University of Nairobi. I think the first since the inception of KCSE to study in the country. Studied medicine at the University of Nairobi, and then went to and is now a doctor, of course, also a motivational speaker. 2003, 2004, I don't quite have the stats. In 2005, the top student was James Candiero Teach from Moi High School, Kabarak, and of course, he went to Massachusetts Institute of Technology and is now a computer engineer in America. In 2006, one of the top students was Herman Mutiso from the Alliance High School, and of course, he went down from the Alliance High School, and of course he got scholarships from both Harvard and MIT, but he chose MIT, and the following year Harvard did not pick a student from Alliance. So you can imagine it took Principal Christopher Haemba to go all the way to Harvard and reassure Alliance officials that Harvard Alliance students still preferred Harvard to any other university. So basically, that is before African Leadership Academy, alliance of the top feeder school to the Ivy League outside of the United States. So you can see how brain drain really affects us. Basically, our top students, all of them go to our top students, all of them go to study in these colleges in America, in these top colleges in America, and they have no, they don't intend to use their return ticket. So that's it. And then another story that I'm looking at, and that is Ghana's Mahama sworn in for a second term. That is Ghana's Mahama. President John Mahama has been sworn in for a second term. So what does this mean? This means that that is Ghana's John Mahama has been sworn in for a second term. So basically, that's just about maybe that is the first African president to have two non-consecutive terms in office. That is the first African president to have two non-consecutive terms. So basically, that shows that to have two non-consecutive terms. So basically, and I think Ghana has been quite a stable democracy in West Africa. Ghana has been quite a stable democracy in West Africa. So I would hope that this stability continues. Elections does not mean you are a stable democracy. I think Ghanaian elections have been close for the past 20 years, and no candidate usually wins by a landslide. It's by the slimmest of margin. So basically, you had Muhammadu Baumia conceding defeat even before the election results were announced. So now you have Ghana's John Mahama returning back to power. He had ruled the country between 2012 and 2016. Now he comes back. Of course, he says he will remake the country to be better. That's what Ghana's John Mahama says. He says he will make the country to be better. So basically, I think African democracy is not working. Basically, democracy is not putting more food on people's pockets. That's just our problem. Democracy is not putting more food in our pockets, more money in our pockets. We need politics that's about economic renewal in Africa, because our forefathers fought for political independence. I think in much of Africa, maybe except the French-speaking African countries, political independence has been achieved. Now we need the final revolution. That is the economic revolution. Africa, 75% of the poorest countries in the world are in sub-Saharan Africa. You can imagine that. 75% of the poorest countries in Africa are in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's not a good reputation to have. That's not really a good thing to have, that 75% of the poorest countries in the world are in sub-Saharan Africa. I don't think it's a good thing to have. I just think that Africa really needs to have the best professionals, so that then we are able to produce. We need to be able to have politics that puts more money in our people's pockets. Look at Nigeria surpassed India as the country with the most absolute poor people in the world. That is Nigeria. Nigeria surpassed India as the country with the most absolute poor people in the world. That is 85 million Nigerians are absolute poor. That is the highest poverty. That makes it the poverty capital in the world. And so that is something we need to be looking at. How is it that Nigeria, when it has the same oil reserves as Qatar, but Qatar has a per capita of 200,000, while Nigeria is just incurable in poverty. Qatar hosted a $200 billion World Cup. You can imagine. Qatar hosted a $200 billion World Cup, but it is not able to host such a while Nigeria is struggling even to host the African Cup of Nations. Qatar has a sovereign fund where every citizen has about 200,000. So I just think that maybe this is, I just think that Africa will need to do more. Democracy does not necessarily lead to stable, to economic prosperity, and maybe this is why we need to ask. We need to have politics of issues, politics of ideology. Look at the opposition parties that are crumbling in Africa because our parties are mere election vehicles. They are not bastions of ideological thought and opinion. Just it. That's just it. Our parties are that is mere election vehicles. They are not bastions of ideological thought and opinion, and this is why we need to be able to make our parties to be at least absolute. To be bastions of ideological thought and opinion. We don't vet people based on their infrastructure plan, based on their jobs plan, based on their healthcare plan. We vote people based on basically what that they have the same surname as us. They have the same surname as us. They have the same maybe the same they speak the same language as us, and so that's why then you have a lot of people voting based on tribe, voting based on tribe, and that doesn't augur well for the future of Africa. I think every African country needs just two parties. I think every African country just needs two parties, either a left of center party that's about equality of opportunity, that's bringing everyone to the same starting lineup, and then of course also a right of center party that's about a right of center party that is about individual dynamism, that is pulling yourself by your own bootstraps. That's how I think Africa will change. That's how Africa will be will leapfrog the world. I just think that Africa is the next gold rush after China. I just think that Africa is the next gold rush after China. And if we really have to embrace Africa, it is the next gold rush of China. So have just two parties: a left of center party, equality of opportunity; a right of center party, individual dynamism, and that's the way we will uplift Africa. And then in American politics, what's the future of who will be the leader of the Democrats in remaking America? In American politics, who will be the leader of the Democrats? So Democrats really have to struggle and find a new leader who will be the leader of the Democrats. So basically, they were defeated in the votes in the electoral college and in the popular vote. If Kamala Harris had won the popular vote, then the problem would be the electoral college. But then Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris in both the electoral college and the popular vote, and so that just means that Democrats have to do more. They have to return and pander to the working class. They were really looking to pander to both the billionaire class and the working class, and I just don't think it worked well. So basically, that didn't work well, and I just hope that then they have the guts to be able to make sure that they are able to make sure that they pander to both the billionaire class and the working class, and I just think that is the way they should be able to. That is the way they should be able to resuscitate their fortunes. Otherwise, they will be beaten. Remember, look at just how a rightward shift that America is having. Facebook is canceling, is abandoning its fact-checking team, basically replacing it with community notes. So basically, I just think that this is really a time that Democrats are going to be in the wilderness, but they can't find another leader like Barack Obama. I just think the last three Democrat presidents have all been corporate centric, so it didn't need to be that the last three American presidents have been corporate centric. I don't think it had to go that way. I just think that these corporate centrists have pandered to capitalism, and it has wrecked the American worker. So maybe a leader such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could come along and rescue the party, but I don't know whether maybe she is too radical, maybe she is too left-wing for the liking of the corporate centrists. So I think there would be a civil war within the Democratic Party on who the next leader of the Democrats is going to be. Donald Trump is going to be sworn in very soon, and so we'll wait and see on how this is going to go. So bye for now, until the next time. Bye for now.